Assalamu alaikum, inshallah you're well. Are you ready to find out what happens in the story of Yusuf today? Now, Yusuf alayhi salam had a wonderful life growing up in a lovely house with Al-Aziz and his wife. But when he got older, something happened and he was put into prison for something he didn't do. And that's not very nice at all. So he was in prison and he had two people he was in prison with. And they both had strange dreams. So they were asking Yusuf alayhi salam, what do they mean? One guy had a dream that he had bread on his head and the birds were eating from his head. The second one had a dream that he was serving wine to his master. And they were both in prison, so they didn't know what these meant. So he explained to them what the dreams meant. One of them meant that he was going to be free and that he was going to be serving the king. And the next one meant that he was going to be killed because he did something bad. And that's what happened. They both left the prison and their dreams came true. Now, the king at the time in Egypt had a strange dream. He had a dream that there were 7 fat cows and then there were 7 skinny cows, and he didn't know what it meant. The man who was serving the king, who was in prison with Yusuf alayhi salam, remembered that Yusuf alayhi salam was good at telling you what dreams meant. So they called Yusuf. Yusuf said, I'm not leaving prison until everybody knows that I didn't do the thing that I was thrown in prison for. So they investigated what happened and they found that he was innocent and Yusuf alayhi salam was free. Once he was innocent, he then explained to the king what the dream meant. He said that the dream meant that we were going to have 7 very good years of harvest, and after that we were going to have 7 very bad years. So there was going to be a famine and things weren't going to be good. So the king thought that this was brilliant and he now had a plan as to what to do. So he hired Yusuf alayhi salam to be in charge of all the finances and the money in the land. So Yusuf did a very good job, and in the 7 years of very good harvest, they stored a lot of food away for those 7 years that were going to be very, very difficult. And that's what... Now in Egypt, they were having a fine time because they had provisions from the very good years through the times of famine. But all the areas around Egypt were having a very difficult time because they hadn't prepared or planned for a famine. Even Yusuf alayhi salam's big brothers, they all were living in a very difficult situation. And people would go to Egypt so that they can ask for some grain so that they don't starve. And that's what Yaqub's sons did. All 10 boys went to Egypt so they can get some grain so that nobody can starve. Yusuf alayhi salam recognized that they were his brothers and thought, this is my way to get my own back and I'm going to teach them a lesson. He knew that there wasn't only 10 brothers. He knew that there was an 11th brother that they had left with their dad. And at the time, everybody had to come to get a bag of grain, and otherwise they wouldn't. So Yusuf alayhi salam said, do you have another brother? They said, yes, we have one more brother. He said, I can't give you any grain until you're all here to collect your sack of grain. So they had to go back and convince their dad Yaqub, who didn't trust them, to let their little brother Binyamin go to Egypt with them. He didn't want them to kill Binyamin too. But they weren't going to be getting any grain if they didn't go back with the littlest brother. So finally Yaqub accepted and agreed that the little brother go with the 10 big brothers. They all went to Egypt to Yusuf. Now Yusuf knew them, but they didn't know him. Now, when they all went back to Yusuf with the youngest brother, they had to all go to Yusuf to get their grains. And so Yusuf did that. But he decided to play a little trick on them. He put something from the castle into one of the sacks, into the littlest brother's sack. And then he said that something's been stolen from the castle. This goblet has been stolen from the castle. We need to search you all before you leave. And they found it in the littlest brother's sack. Yusuf said that the littlest brother has to go to prison because he's the one who stole something from the castle. The big brothers all panicked and thought, no, we can't let our little brother go to prison because we already lost one of our brothers and our father would never forgive us for losing another brother. Now the youngest brother recognized Yusuf. He realised that Yusuf was playing a trick on the horrible big brothers. So the big brothers were asking for forgiveness and asking for forgiveness. Please don't let our little brother go to prison. Please let him come home with us. Our father will never forgive us. Please, please, please. And they were bowing down to Yusuf to ask him, to beg him to let this little brother go. Now, do you remember the story that we said last time about the dream Yusuf had when he was a little boy, about the planets bowing down to him? That's what happened. All the brothers bowed down to Yusuf. Now, Yusuf then wasn't mean, and he told them that, look, I'm your brother and I'm still alive and you did this to me. And they were shocked. They thought, how could this be? How is he still alive? So they went back to their father Yaqub with all the grains that they had, but they also took something that belonged to Yusuf. And they took it and they put it over their dad's face, and their dad said, oh, I smell Yusuf. Yusuf's alive. And he got better and his eyes got better and he could see again. And he went and he saw Yusuf and they had a wonderful time. And the brothers felt terrible for everything that they did. And they asked Allah to forgive them. And they asked Yusuf to forgive them. And they asked Yaqub to forgive them. And everything was better. Now this is a very important and very wonderful story in the Quran, and there's a surah that's called Surah Yusuf that tells us the story from the beginning right through to the end. So maybe you could go through it with your mum and dad. There are also a few cartoon videos that you can check out on YouTube that go through the story as well. I really hope you enjoyed this story because it's one of my absolute favourite stories, and inshallah I'll see you next time with another story. Assalamu alaikum.